My name is Grace Carter. I'm 34 years old, and I grew up in a small town in Ohio. People often say every parent loves all of their children the same. I wanted to believe that was true, but my life told a different story. I have a younger brother named Jason and a younger sister named Emma. Emma and I were close. She was quiet and kind. She always tried to make peace in our family. Jason was different. He was loud, charming, and always got what he wanted. My mother, Linda Carter, loved Jason with all her heart. My father, Michael Carter, never stopped her. He simply smiled and agreed with everything she said. As a little girl, I worked hard to make my parents proud. I cleaned my room without being asked. I helped Emma with her homework. I washed the dishes after dinner. I earned good grades in school. Every report card was full of A's. I thought if I became the perfect daughter, my parents would finally look at me with pride. Instead, I always heard the same words. Grace, why can't you be more fun? Grace, don't make your brother upset. Grace, you're older. You should understand. It did not matter what Jason did. Someone else was always blamed. One summer afternoon, I was 14 years old. Mom baked Jason's favorite chocolate cake because he passed one math test. I stood beside her with a small envelope in my hand. Inside was a letter from school. I had won a state writing competition. It was the biggest achievement of my life. I waited until dinner. Everyone sat around the table. My heart beat fast. I have something to share, I said. Dad smiled for a second. What is it? I handed him the letter. He looked at it for only a few seconds before putting it beside his plate. That's nice, he said. Then Mom clapped her hands. Jason, tell everyone about your basketball game. Jason stood up and acted like a famous athlete. Everyone laughed. Everyone listened. My letter stayed on the table. No one picked it up again. After dinner, I quietly carried the empty plates to the kitchen. Emma followed me. She touched my arm. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Those 4 words meant more than all the applause I never received. That night I cried under my blanket. Not because I lost, but because no one seemed to see me. As the years passed, nothing changed. Jason forgot homework. Mom blamed the teachers. Jason broke Dad's fishing boat. Dad said accidents happened. Jason spent money without asking. Mom called him young and carefree. When I made one small mistake, the house became silent. I felt like I carried the weight of the whole family. One evening, I came home from my part-time job. I had saved enough money to buy Mom a beautiful birthday necklace. It wasn't expensive, but I worked many weekends to afford it. I wrapped it carefully with blue paper. Mom opened the box. Oh, she said softly. Before I could ask if she liked it, Jason walked through the front door, carrying a cheap bouquet of flowers from a gas station. Mom's face lit up. My wonderful son! She hugged him tightly. She kissed his forehead. She placed my necklace back inside the box without wearing it. Then she put Jason's flowers into her favorite vase. I smiled because I didn't want anyone to see the pain on my face. Later that night, I found my necklace still sitting inside its box on the kitchen counter. Unopened. Forgotten. I picked it up and held it against my chest. For the first time, I stopped asking myself one question: what is wrong with me? Instead, another question slowly entered my heart. What if I was never the problem? I didn't know then that life would answer that question many years later, and the answer would break my parents' hearts far more than mine. After high school, I received a scholarship to a college in Columbus. It was the first time I lived away from home. I thought the distance would make my parents miss me. Instead, the phone rarely rang. If Mom called, she wanted one thing: "Grace, can you send Jason some money? He's having a hard time." Jason was 19 years old. He had dropped out of community college after only one semester. He said school was boring. He promised he would find a great job. Months passed, then years. He changed jobs like people changed clothes. Nothing was ever his fault. His boss was unfair. His coworkers were jealous. The work was too difficult. There was always another excuse. I graduated and became an elementary school teacher. It wasn't a job that made me rich, but I loved helping children. I rented a small apartment. I drove an old used car. I saved every dollar I could. One Saturday afternoon, Mom called again. Jason needs help paying his rent. I looked at my bank account. I had been saving for a newer car because mine often broke down. Still, I sent the money. "Thank you, sweetheart," Mom said. Then she added quietly, "Don't tell Jason it came from you. He'll feel embarrassed." I smiled sadly. He doesn't even know I helped? It'll be better this way. That happened again. And again. Every few months, I sent money. Sometimes it paid Jason's rent. Sometimes it covered his credit card bills. Sometimes it fixed his truck. Every time, my parents thanked Jason for working things out. They never told him the truth. One Thanksgiving, I drove 3 hours to visit my family. I carried homemade pumpkin pie and small gifts for everyone. The house looked the same. The old oak tree still stood in the front yard. For a moment, I felt like a little girl again. Mom hugged Jason the moment he arrived. "My handsome boy is here." She kissed his cheek. Dad laughed and patted his back. "Come watch the football game with me." When Emma and I walked in together, Mom smiled politely. "Oh, you're here." That was all. During dinner, Jason talked about starting another business. "I just need a little investment," he said confidently. Dad nodded. "That sounds promising." "What kind of business?" I asked. Jason shrugged. "I haven't decided yet." Mom frowned at me. "Grace, don't question your brother. He has big dreams." I looked around the table. No one else seemed surprised. After dinner, I helped Mom wash the dishes. She sighed. "I worry about Jason all the time." "What about Emma?" I asked gently. "What about me?" Mom stopped washing a plate. "You girls are strong." She smiled as if that explained everything. "Jason needs us more." Her words stayed with me during the long drive home. Strong. People thought being strong meant needing nothing. But strong people get tired too. Strong people cry too. Strong people also hope someone will ask if they're okay. No one ever asked me. A few months later, Dad called. His voice sounded worried. "The roof is leaking." We can't afford the repairs. Without thinking, I used almost all my savings to pay for a new roof. Dad promised to pay me back someday. I knew he never would. I didn't ask. When I visited after the repairs were finished, Mom thanked Jason in front of their neighbors. Our son always takes care of us. I froze. Jason smiled proudly. He didn't correct her. He accepted the praise as if he had written the check himself. I stood quietly on the porch, holding a bag of groceries I had also paid for. Emma walked outside a few minutes later. She looked at me with sad eyes. "I know the truth," she whispered. "That's enough," I said. But it wasn't enough. Not really. As the years passed, Jason's life became more expensive. He bought things he couldn't afford. A new truck, designer clothes, weekend trips with friends. Whenever he ran out of money, he visited our parents. Whenever our parents ran out of money, they called me. I never asked where the money went. I already knew. One rainy evening, Emma called me. Her voice shook. "Grace, what happened?" She took a deep breath. Jason convinced Mom and Dad to take out a second mortgage on this house. I felt my heart stop. How much? A lot. For his newest business. I closed my eyes. What business? Emma began to cry. Grace, I don't think there is one. That night, I couldn't sleep. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid that Jason would fail. I was afraid my parents would lose everything. And somehow, I knew the worst was still coming. Jason never started a business. He used the money to chase a dream that only existed in his imagination. He rented a fancy office for a few months. He bought expensive furniture. He drove a luxury SUV. He took vacations and posted smiling pictures online. My parents believed every word he said. Success takes time, Mom always told me. He'll pay us back. I wanted to believe her, but deep inside, I knew the truth. One afternoon, my phone rang while I was teaching. It was Emma. She never called during work unless something was wrong. I answered as soon as my class ended. Grace, she cried. Dad had a heart attack. My hands began to shake. Is he alive? Yes, he's in the hospital. I drove there as fast as I could. When I reached the waiting room, I saw Mom sitting alone. She looked older than I remembered. Her hair had become almost completely gray. The confident woman who always defended Jason looked frightened. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears. Oh, Grace! I hugged her tightly. Where's Jason? I asked. Mom looked away. He said he was busy. I frowned. Busy? He promised he'd come later. Later never came. Dad survived the heart attack, but the doctor gave him strict instructions. No more stress, the doctor said. He needs rest and regular treatment. The hospital bills were higher than my parents expected. Dad's insurance covered only part of the cost. Mom quietly opened her purse. There was almost nothing inside. What happened to your savings? I asked. She lowered her head. We used everything to help Jason. I already knew the answer. Still, hearing the words hurt. A week later, I visited their house. The mailbox was full. Several envelopes were marked "Final Notice." Another warned about late mortgage payments. The house that had been our family home for 30 years was in danger. I called Jason. He answered after several tries. "Hey, Grace. You need to come home." "I'm kind of busy." "Dad almost died." "I know." "You know?" "Mom told me." I couldn't believe how calm he sounded. "They're about to lose the house." There was silence. Then he sighed. "I can't help them." "What do you mean?" "I have my own life." I felt anger rising inside me. They gave you everything. I never asked them to. You accepted it. They chose to help me. I closed my eyes. "Jason, they're your parents." He laughed softly. "They're your parents too." Then he hung up. I stared at my phone. For years, Mom had called Jason her greatest blessing. Now, when she needed him most, he disappeared. The next month became the hardest of my life. I worked during the day. Every evening, I drove to my parents' house. I bought groceries. I took Dad to medical appointments. I cleaned the house. I paid the overdue utility bills. I never complained. One evening, I found Mom sitting alone at the kitchen table. She was holding an old family photo. Jason stood proudly in the center. I stood in the back, almost hidden. Mom looked at the picture for a long time. Then she whispered something I had waited my whole life to hear. "I was wrong." I sat beside her. She began to cry. "I thought loving Jason more would protect him." She wiped her eyes. "But I only made him selfish." Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, she looked at me. "I don't deserve your kindness." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hug her. Another part remembered every birthday, every forgotten achievement, every lonely tear. She reached for my hand. "I never saw how much you carried." I looked down at our hands. "I spent my whole childhood trying to earn your love." She covered her face. "I know." "I thought if I worked harder, if I became better, maybe one day you'd choose me." She cried even harder. "I already lost that chance, didn't I?" For the first time in my life, I saw my mother not as a hero or a villain. I saw her as a woman living with the weight of her own mistakes. Outside, rain began to fall against the windows. The house felt quiet. Too quiet. Then someone knocked on the front door. Mom stood up with hope shining in her eyes. Maybe Jason came back. She hurried to open the door. But it wasn't Jason. A man in a dark suit handed her a thick envelope. "I'm sorry," he said gently. "It's a foreclosure notice. You have 30 days to leave the house." Mom's hands began to tremble. The paper slipped from her fingers and fell onto the floor. In that heartbreaking moment, I realized something. My parents hadn't just lost their favorite son. They were about to lose the only home they had ever known. The next 30 days passed faster than any of us expected. My parents packed the house one box at a time. Every room held a memory. The kitchen where Mom baked birthday cakes. The living room where Dad watched football every Sunday. The backyard where Emma, Jason, and I played as children. Soon, strangers would own it. One afternoon, Mom found an old photo album. She sat on the floor and slowly turned each page. There were dozens of pictures of Jason, his first bicycle, his baseball games, his birthdays. Then she reached the last pages. There were only a few pictures of Emma, even fewer of me. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I didn't even notice," she whispered. "You were always there." I smiled sadly. Sometimes the people who are always there become invisible. She closed the album and cried quietly. A week later, my parents moved into a small apartment. It was clean but simple, much smaller than the house they had loved for 30 years. Dad walked slowly because his heart was still weak. Mom looked exhausted. Emma helped carry the last boxes upstairs. Jason never came, not once, not even a phone call. That evening, I cooked dinner in their tiny kitchen. We ate together in silence. Finally, Dad put down his fork. His eyes filled with tears. "I failed you." I looked at him. "When you were little," he said, "I saw everything your mother did." I knew Jason received more attention. "I knew you were hurting." He lowered his head. "But I stayed quiet." His voice shook. I told myself it wasn't serious. I was wrong. I reached across the table and held his hand. "You can't change the past." "No," he replied, "but I can tell you the truth." He looked directly into my eyes. "You have always been the child we should have appreciated the most." For a moment, no one spoke. Those words healed a wound that had lived inside me for more than 20 years. Not completely. Some scars never disappear. But they can stop hurting. Several months passed. Dad's health slowly improved. Mom found a part-time job at a neighborhood library. Emma visited every weekend. Life became quiet, peaceful. One Saturday morning, there was another knock on the apartment door. When Dad opened it, Jason stood outside. He looked different. His expensive clothes were gone. His face looked tired. He avoided everyone's eyes. "I need help," he said. No one answered. He stepped inside. "I lost my job." My friends left. "I have nowhere to stay." Mom stared at him for a long time. This time, she did not run to hug him. She did not call him her wonderful son. Instead, she asked one simple question. "When your father was in the hospital, where were you?" Jason looked down. "I was scared." Dad shook his head. "No, you were selfish." The room became silent. Jason turned toward me. "Grace." "I'm sorry. I should have helped. I thought someone else would." I believed he was sorry, but I also knew something important. An apology cannot erase years of pain. It can only become the first step toward change. I took a deep breath. "You can stay here for 1 week." Jason looked surprised. "1 week?" "Yes." "After that, you must find a job. You must pay your own bills. And you must stop expecting everyone else to rescue you." He nodded slowly. "I understand." For the first time in his life, No one argued with him. No one made excuses for him. Mom simply said, "It's time for you to become the man we always believed you already were." Jason found work at a local warehouse 2 weeks later. The job was difficult. The pay was modest. But he kept going. Little by little, he began taking responsibility for his own life. It did not happen overnight. Real change never does. One spring afternoon, our family gathered in a small park for a picnic. Nothing was fancy, just sandwiches, lemonade, and warm sunshine. Mom sat beside me on a wooden bench. She gently took my hand. "I spent so many years chasing the child who kept walking away." She smiled through tears. "I almost lost the daughter who never left." I leaned my head against her shoulder. "I didn't need you to be perfect," I said softly. "I only needed you to see me." She squeezed my hand. "I see you now." As we watched the birds fly across the blue sky, I realized something. My childhood could never be rewritten. The years of favoritism would always be part of my story, but they no longer controlled my future. I finally understood that my worth had never depended on my parents' approval. It had always lived inside me. And sometimes the greatest victory is not making people love you. It is learning that you were worthy of love all along. Moral lesson: a parent's favoritism can deeply wound a child, but kindness, self-worth, and healthy boundaries are stronger than bitterness. Love is not proved by words or gifts. It is proved by the people who stay when life becomes difficult.